Hey, this is Greg with Nanobot Rock. This episode, we discuss thrift store music finds, Clay's Tiger Beat magazine subscription, The Killers, and songs we just can't get enough of. We explore the songs Strawberries by Good Dog Nigel, All I Need by Quinn DeVeaux, Flat Black Sea by Lemon Pitch, Keep It from The Still Tide, and This Recliner from Starflyer 59. This is Nanobot Rock Mixtape.
It's a nice Record Exchange shirt you have, though.
Thank you. 1977, the year that the Record Exchange opened. This was the last one in the store, and I made the poor teenage kid climb up on a ladder and pull it down off the mannequin that was up above the windows so that I could have it. Because this is America, and I want this shirt, damn it.
That's right. You make that retail worker work for his money.
They're reopening, which makes me happy.
Yay.
Yay. It's all sorts of limited people in the store and probably one-way signs that people will disregard on the floor so that,
Do you have to wear your mask?
Masks, I believe, are required. I've been wearing my mask when I went out. I did find some more. As you know, I like to go to the thrift stores and find random CDs and albums. And I found some quality ones. I went out yesterday for about 15 minutes at the store and came home with like 7. One of them was Freddie Johnson, Bad Reputation. Remember that song? They say you got a bad reputation. And I try, whatever, however that song goes.
Yeah, I was more thinking of the other Bad Reputation.
You got a bad reputation. That'd be Thin Lizzy.
Never talking about my bad reputation. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-doo.
That one. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-do. Getting the hamster dance. We're not going back, Clay. We don't go back.
We only look forward.
Never look back.
I thought you were going to tell me that you had gone to the thrift store, bought some CDs, and you fashioned yourself a mask out of them.
That would be cool. I'd have like a Liz Fair mask because you found a thrift store.
It would be all angular and polygonal.
I like finding these like really weird albums, like just the name of the bands. Like if it's so weird, like I'll just automatically grab it just because I want like something genuinely bad but good bad. So I'm really interested in that. So I want to go and I want to find these bands that's like Dump Truck Lipsticks greatest hits. Like I want that band. I want that CD. Like I don't know why. And then you get in the car and you put it on and it's like, this is terrible and I love it. I'm glad I spent $1 on this.
Is Dump Truck Lipstick really a band, or was that just something you pulled
They're
from?
right here. Hang on, let me grab them. I got 7 of them.
So not only Greg can't hear me, so I'm just going to keep talking because, that's what we do. We just kind of keep the air going, even when we're not recording. Because God forbid there be any dead space while we're listening to anything that we're talking about. And, oh, hey, welcome back.
What you were talking about me behind my back.
I'm really genuinely curious as to why you have 7 of them. That's not dumb.
So I know it's not. I know it. We'll get there. But the first one I got, Ben Jellin.
Oh,
Give It All Away.
I thought you were going like, are you gelling? I'm gelling like a felon.
I'm gelling
like Mudgelin. Like Ben
Jellin. So that's one. This could turn into like a weekly thing. Just what did Greg get at the thrift store this week? Freddie Johnson. Freedy Johnson. F-R-E-E-D-Y Johnson.
Freedy Johnson.
Freedy Johnston. Johnston.
Oh, and he's at the Taj Mahal.
I don't think that's him though. He would have de-aged quite spectacularly to get the... Because there's the front, there's the back, and people listening can clearly see the front and the back of these albums, so that's good. So we got that one.
It's good radio.
This Perfect World record. I got Corey Stevens.
I love that Duran song. Corey Stevens, Road to Zen. Is that Cat's younger brother?
It's a blues album, not Cat's. Although, if you read it backwards, it looks like it's Snevitz.
Why is he wielding his flute like it's some sort of battle axe?
Flute? That's a guitar. It's not a flute.
Oh, okay. Well, from my angle, it looked okay. Yeah, from my angle, it looked like a flute. He's holding it sideways, so it's an optical illusion. Like when you stare at one of those pictures, and then you have to see the sailboat.
It's a schooner. Schooner's a sailboat. I found this, so I figured I'd pick it up. It's the final Soundgarden album, King Animal.
Okay.
Grabbed it. Why not?
It's $1. Why not? Alana
Davis, Blame It On Me. She had a song called 32 Flavors that came out in 1997, as I said.
And then Baskin Robbins sued her for copyright infringement?
Actually, since that was really kind of her only release, I don't actually know if it was, but if that was her only release, they probably just settled on giving her a job. And then, so this one, this is a perfect example of the weird name. What?
I just love the idea of Baskin Robbins suing people, and they're like, no. Instead of paying us $1 million for damages, you can put on a visor and an apron and you can serve our ice cream. That is your penance.
Do you want to try a sample? This is a band from San Diego called Drive. It's rock, but I guess they're apparently got some like Christian rock influence to it. But I bought the record because it's called Thrifty McKickstart. I'm sorry, Thrifty Mr. Kickstart, not McKickstart sounds better to me.
I also like how they are Drive with a Y, which really drives that rock and roll point home.
It's Aaron in Oshak Hennessy's office.
Drive with a Y. We're like Rat with 2 T's, or Striper.
Then the last one I picked up was because I didn't actually have a physical copy of it, and I am still, as we've talked about several times, I am big into the physical medium of art and music, and so I picked up Day and Age, the highly controversial Killers record.
What was so controversial about it?
The fact that they sang "Are We Human" or "Are We Dancer" stirred all sorts of controversy. That's
you're
back in 2008.
You're either human or you're a reindeer. Those are your two options.
Oh my God, it all makes sense now. Are we human or are we Prancer? Rudolph's nose is red now.
My problem with that album was it did the Pearl Jam thing for me, where they just completely took a turn. And it's not that it was a bad turn, but the Killers' debut album, Hot Fuss, right?
Sam's Town.
No, debut album is Hot Fuss, sir.
Oh, Hot Fuss was the debut. Sam's Town came second.
Follow-up was Sam's Town, and then third was Day and Age. I like, for a short time, I feel like they basically had a very similar parallel track with Pearl Jam, where Pearl Jam released 10 and, we're all like, oh my God, this was amazing. And Versus came out and we're like, this is pretty good. And then Vitology came out and there were a lot of people that were like, I'm done with this band.
No.
I didn't. And I feel like the same thing happened with the Killers. Those 3 albums basically gave them the same track.
Okay, for that reference, I can understand where you're going with that, but Sam's Town is one of the probably, I'd throw down the gauntlet on this one and say that it's probably one of the best records in the last 20 years to be released. Sam's Town is amazing.
I agree with you. However, it didn't run out of the gate with rock and roll quite like Hot Fuss did. And when it came out, they released the single, which was
When You Were Young.
Yeah. So their first single, When You Were Young, it's another song, like another rock and roll song that just jumps out of the gate. And then the rest of the album is Read My Mind, which is so much tamer. And so there are a lot of people that felt like they got tricked with Sam's Town. But if you actually listen to the album separately from that whole expectation of the next great rock band and think of it more from a musical piece, yeah, it's a really, really good album. But the people who fell in love with Mr. Brightside or any of the other big hits off that album, wow. It's like I should have the discography up or something. I'm completely blanking on everything.
Well, okay, so Hot Fuss had Mr. Brightside, Smile Like You Mean It. Somebody told me all the things that I've done.
Yeah,
I've got soul, but I'm not a soldier.
That's right. And Jenny was a friend of mine. Like, it opens with Jenny was a friend of mine. And like, so everything on that album is just rock and roll. And then Sam's Town, not so much. That's when Brandon Flowers, got his bolo tie and started thinking about things a little more seriously.
Bolo ties will do that to you. But Sam's Town, and what is Sam's Town, Clay?
It's a town that a guy named Sam thought would be a fun place to live.
Or it's a casino in Las Vegas that is the home to the Killers. And was a hotel. I think it's probably, like most things in Vegas, probably blown to smithereens and crumbled to the ground. And
there once was a hotel from Las Vegas.
I'm just kidding. I was not going to make reference to the Killers' career. Well, Brandon Flowers went off to do that. He did a solo album it was interesting. I think it's kind of like Nathaniel Rateliff when he went to do Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats. When he did SOB and that whole album, it's got kind of a soul R&B twinge to it. But he had records before that were all folk and they were a lot more mellowed out. And I feel like maybe his fans from before he did that, son of a bitch, give me a drink. I think that his fans may have felt the same way. So then when Brandon Flowers went off and did this, I don't want to call it crazy, but this very interesting album that he put together that was more based, I think, to give an ode to his vocal stylings than anything else. So it didn't quite have the energy and the pickup and the glam and the huzzah that...
He wasn't wearing eyeliner.
He was not. And who was the guy in that video? The actor.
Was it Eric Roberts?
It is Eric Roberts. You are correct.
I can't remember the name of the song, but I can remember the actor who played in the video.
For remembering Eric Roberts, you have won a copy of Thrifty Mr. Kickstarter by Drive with
Thrifty
a Y.
McKickstarter.
But when I look at the thrift store albums, it makes me wonder, like, what are these artists doing now? Like, where did they go? Like, you put in all this effort, you recorded this album, and then it ends up in a thrift store in Idaho, like 23 years later. And the irony with that is that as I'm digging through all these albums that are at the thrift store, I find a couple copies of Goodnight Human by Carrie Judd, who is the Boise-based Carrie Judd, a.k.a. Danny Black. And I had half a mind to just send him a quick message and wonder what he's up to these days, because his album's in the thrift store.
I just love the idea that you think that all of these artists only have one album and this somehow ends up in Idaho. Like this is like the last one that's ever been made. And it's just kind of like, you know, it's like watching a leaf blow across America and then it ends up in Iowa somewhere and that's its final resting place.
With Doug in Iowa. No, it's not the last record that is in existence, because if this was the last copy of Day and Age by the Killers, we'd be having a whole different conversation about that. But not the last, but it's like Alana Davis.
Greg is a lucky boy. He has the golden ticket of the Day and Age.
I've got a golden ticket. We're doing too much singing on this, and it's going to have people stop listening to us. But it's like the feather in the Forrest Gump moment where there it is. It lands at Doug from Iowa.
Yes, that's a much better analogy than my leaf blowing across Iowa.
I'm taking a moment to have a mental picture as I hit my knuckle. This is a dangerous job. But it's interesting that we somehow ended up on the Killers, because you were talking about Mr. Brightside.
I was.
And tell us about Mr. Brightside, Clay.
What would you like to know, Greg?
Who was the actor in the... No. What brought up Mr. Brightside before this? We were talking about this. And you had read... Was it in Cosmo that you were reading, or was it...
Yes. It was in an episode of Teen Vogue that I read this, and they were talking...
Beats.
Yes. Tiger Beat is back, by the way.
Did it ever really go? I mean, if it lives on in our hearts...
Nothing ever truly dies. What is dead may never die.
Kill it if you must. Okay, so you're reading Tiger Beat magazine.
Yes. I had I was lying on my bed with my feet up in the air like I'm a preteen girl, just kicking them back and forth, reading about Mr. Brightside. And
is that between the articles on Jonathan Taylor Thomas?
And who was the other guy?
Devin Sawa.
Maybe Kirk Cameron, a young Kirk Cameron before he got into Left Behind or whatever that church of people who leave the planet is.
Oh my God. This hole is being dug by you this week, my friend.
Our Church of Perpetual Lady Who Leaves the Planet.
The Church of Our Lady Peace.
So in this fictional issue of Teen Tiger Beat Vogue Vanity Fair, the concept came up. It was probably BuzzFeed. I mean, let's be honest. Everything's BuzzFeed this year anyway. This decade. But in this article that was written by Kirk Cameron, they were talking about...
I tried. Oh my God.
I can't right now. I can't do this anymore, Craig. My will has officially been broken.
Will Wheaton.
Okay.
Cool whip.
So in this article, Kirk Cameron said that not the most popular song, but that Mr. Brightside is one of those timeless songs that people to this day still love, and they can't get enough of it. And every time it comes on the radio, they get really excited. So it made me think, what is that song for me? And I actually want to ask, what is that song for you?
Before we do that, I'm just thinking of people getting really excited when Mr. Brightside comes on the radio. It's like they're driving down the road and listening to the radio station, and it plays like Meghan Trainor's All About That Bass, and then the 80s, 90s, and today radio. And they come on, and it's cues Mr. Brightside.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you just see someone in their car that's just like, I'm so excited. It's the Killers. Like, you like visibly get excited, or just like, oh, this is neat.
Listen, Greg, we don't have much right now to get excited about. So if people want to get excited about Mr. Brightside and the Killers, go right ahead.
I have just learned that my T-shirt from Wax Trax Records in Denver, Colorado, my old stomping grounds of when I lived in Denver and used to go buy records, shipped. That excited me. That's excitement.
Okay, as far as breaking news goes, we got to work on Greg's breaking news segment and get much more exciting material.
Like Mr. Brightside, because apparently that excites people, but no, not Wax Trax Records in Denver. Shout out to Wax Trax Records. I'm going to say Wax Trax Records one more time.
It's Trax with an X.
It is. And they're super awesome. And if you're in Denver or traveling to Denver, visiting or passing through, strongly suggest you check out Wax Trax Records. They are not a sponsor, but owe them a lot for all the musical discovery I found there in my early years. So thank you much. But that song to me, the song that doesn't get old, that doesn't tire, that I get excited about, that's a tough question. Because I mean, naturally, with what we do, I consume a lot of music. And as finding 7 new records at the thrift store. I mean, that's something that's, I consume a lot of music. I'm constantly going through music, but ones that don't tire to me. The first one that comes to mind is probably Grounds for Divorce by Elbow. It's not necessarily a classic per se, as in it didn't come out 35 years ago. But it's definitely one of those songs. It's the song that broke me into Elbow, as I'm sure it did a lot of people. And I say broken into as if I was resisting them in some way. It introduced me to Elbow, and I am a monumental Elbow fan. Not of my elbow. I am referring to the British band Elbow, not the joint on your arm. So Grounds for Divorce is definitely one that doesn't tire to me. The Story by Brandi Carlile.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent one.
That's one that I will shamelessly say that I will probably belt that out if I'm driving alone, or if you're in the truck with me. Yes, I live in Idaho and I drive a truck. It's kind of a prereq. My camo will come after my Wax Trax Records shirt. I'm sure I've got some Carhartts coming. But The Story by Brandi Carlile is definitely a song that never grows old to me. It's full of emotion, but it's this enduring emotion and this anthem that just never gets old to me. And I guess the last one that comes to mind is, as odd as it may sound, because I'm sure a lot of people find this track very annoying, Hocus Pocus by Focus is one that I just can't get tired of. It's this insane amount of energy and this whimsical sound, and then basically feels like this band is just walking around the studio finding any instrument that they can and throwing it into the track in its own verse in some way. But I never, ever grow tired of that. So those are kind of the 3 that come to mind for me.
Okay, Hocus Pocus by Focus. Do I know that one? Is that one of those songs that I would know but don't know the name of the song nor the artist? It comes up in a lot of soundtracks and things. You probably will recognize pieces of it, but they're a 1960s Dutch prog rock band. So unless you're like huge into the 1960s Dutch prog rock scene, you may not, but highly recommend Hocus Pocus by Focus. It's an intense track that's a lot of fun, and it's definitely it's probably my favorite song of all time, but it's definitely one that I don't get tired of. Nice.
And the down 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 down. And then it's got a really rockin' yodel, and I don't think anybody's rocked a yodel as hard as Focus did, so they get extra points for that. But Clay, what about you?
I would say there's 2 that come to mind, so I don't go with all of your extra credit with coming up with 3.
I'm an overachiever. I'm sorry.
That's all right. You're
not sorry.
Gold star. So in terms of classics, I would probably go with Under Pressure by Queen featuring one David Bowie. That song is
Is that the one that goes doom, 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 da, da, doom, doom? Or the one that goes doom, 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 da, da, doom, doom?
Doom. Vanilla Ice did not rip them off because I go doom and they go doom. That was his
the inflection of the doom.
That was his whole argument, was he changed one note.
Respectfully, Vanilla Ice's whole career is based on the inflection of the doom, so that's okay.
Especially as he's flipping houses.
Doom.
But yes, that was my number one.
What about that track?
Just the energy that comes out of it. I mean, I just, like anything else that Freddie Mercury does, that, you know, he just puts his all into it, and you can tell, like, with just every piece, like every ounce of his vocals is into that song. And then when you get that coupled with what David Bowie does, like, it just works so well. And the song just makes me happy every time I hear it. Like, if I'm in a bad mood, it makes me feel happy. And if I'm in a good mood, it just makes me feel even better.
Justification enough.
That's right.
So what about number two then? What's the second track?
The second track is Missed the Boat by Modest Mouse. And it's another one of those, it's the whole album, We Were Dead Before the Ship Even Sank, is a very uneven album for me. But the songs that are good on that album are really good. And that one track, to me, just not to get too sentimental or sappy, like whenever I hear that song, I think of when my wife and I first started dating. And so that always just takes me to a good time of my life anyway. And just the guitar riff is just so calming to me with the chord progression that they have in it. And then the chorus just packs in so much emotion.
And that's the same record as Dashboard and March into the Sea. But it's a great track, absolutely. I very respectable choices, my good man.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what else on that. And then, yes, Spitting Venom, and I'm trying to remember the other song that I really love off that track. But that song in particular, like, it just whenever it comes on, it's just kind of like oh yeah, this is so nice. I really like this song.
And it never grows old to you.
It never grows old.
And the dashboard melted, but we still have the stereo. The dashboard melted, but we still have the stereo.
But we talked about a couple of classic sounds on some of our favorite stuff. And there's no denying that Good Dog Nigel is a serious throwback sound. One that I did not expect to come from a 23-year-old American. You listen to this sound, and Good Dog Nigel is the stage name of 23-year-old Parker Amy. And this, he looks the part. Like he basically looks like Randy Rhoads with a puffed out blouse. And everything in the look is, you know, that early 70s kind of swagger to it. And there's that word again. And
it's punctuated by his hair.
Yeah.
Those glorious locks.
They are something else.
I'm trying to get there, but I'm coming across a little more Billy Ray Cyrus, Achy Breaky Heart at the moment. But that's a really good point, is that all the vintage qualities of Good Dog Nigel, and specifically we're talking about the track Strawberries and the Lynchburg, Virginia rock and roller. And I thought about this for quite a while when we were talking about this, and I want to bounce it off of you. Is it's simply rock and roll, and I tried so hard to think of this or see this in a different light than just rock and roll, and I struggled and I couldn't, and it really just came across as rock to me. It's maybe glam rock in a sense, but it's that vintage quality of rock that really stands out.
It is completely that kind of glam vintage rock. And I know in some of the press materials he talks about, I'm just thinking about what you said about the classic rock sensibility of this, and everything about this track just screams that traditional rock sense. I mean, it's got, even though it's got this kind of heavy distorted guitar chord going through it, it's still a really clean take on it. You know, like they're working through the progressions, they're doing their thing, and yeah, there's a little bit of a jingle jangle going on in the background with, you know, the second guitar, but like he's setting up a very just straightforward rock and roll song to me.
And you pointed out the riff, and I think that's key here, because I picked up on that as well. I kind of gravitated to that riff that lasts for pretty much 3.5 minutes doesn't get old or too repetitive for me, because it's very present. Rocking the flying V and the music video to it as well, which is amazing. And that video's just vintage glory in and of itself. But for 3.5 minutes, we basically get this riff that doesn't get old. But as I'm listening to it, and you kind of close your eyes and sit back a little bit, hopefully not while driving, but you sit back with your eyes closed listening to this track, and it reminds me of that excited when it comes on the radio. You roll down the window on a late spring day, and you just listen to this and you jam out to it, and it's familiar, but it doesn't get old.
Well, it feels like you can pick up the song anywhere in the 3 minutes and you're going to get the same thing from the song.
I guess it just kind of helps melt away everything else. It kind of envelops you in a way that makes you want to pay attention to it and draws you in. But Good Dog Nigel, and I'm quoting what was said in the bio about Good Dog Nigel, but he writes with the purpose of overarching optimism, a desire to reach for the small gems in life, and how to help others find and relish them too. And Strawberries is that gem to me. It's a gem. It doesn't sound like anything we've come across, and I'll explain specifically what makes it different and why that's different. But it really feels like a gem. It feels like a great find, and it feels like a great way to kick off the mixtape is with Strawberries. Strawberries, Good Dog Nigel, like I said, is a gem. And the thing that really stuck out to me was that fuzzy rock sound through the lens of a past. Like, I can't quite put my finger on when in the past, but it's definitely vintage sounding. But through it all, it's the distorted speed. And if you listen closely, he plays with the speed of the track. And at moments, it kind of like a whammy bar, slows the whole track and then picks it right back up. Not enough to where it's distracting, but it adds this wave depth to it. And it adds so much when you really pay attention and you listen for that distorted speed. And you can hear it really well at the end of the track. But if you go back and you listen again, it's throughout the track that you find this speed variance that I started to pick up on and started to almost smile as I'm listening to this, because it was neat to hear.
That's interesting, because I don't even think I picked up on that. So I have something to look forward to the next time that I listen to it. But I see a lot of that pacing going on in the song as it's going along. And it almost feels like his voice kind of brings it in a different pace too, because how the song is just kind of cleanly chopping along at its own pace. And then he kind of throws in his, I'm going to say it's kind of like almost like a early Tom Petty-esque kind of, not nasally, but kind of that, I don't know what the right word is here.
Just kind of a higher tone kind of
sound.
Yeah,
a Tom Petty-esque tenor to his voice. I can see that kind of slowing it down in places too and spreading over on the tones. But the whole thing to me just feels like they're just kind of, they're chugging along at like you said, they're going along at a very set pace. And I haven't listened to anything else that Good Dog Nigel has put out yet. But I feel like listening to this, I feel like they're almost coasting through this song. Like it feels like they're a muscle car in cruise control, that they're capable of so much more, but you can't get there yet.
It's driving the strip past the drive-in burger joint in that muscle car is Good Dog Nigel Strawberries. I listened to a little bit more of it, and it's really interesting that you brought up the vocals in this, because normally when I'm listening to a track, almost instinctively, I gravitate towards the vocals and the lyrics. My mind goes there before anything else usually. I want to hear what the song has to say. This one flipped that on its head for me, and I really listened to everything but the lyrics and vocals when I started listening to this. Just naturally, it drew me to another aspect of the song, which is another thing that fascinated me about this. And from what I heard from Good Dog Nigel, there's a lot here, and Strawberries isn't how do I want to put it? It's not a direct reflection of every sound that Good Dog Nigel is, but it's a hell of an addition to a really cool vintage rooted sound that's hopefully making a comeback. And I wish him all the best on this, because I'd love to hear more from Good Dog Nigel. And I know that he really became the entertainer that he wanted to be, because he struggled with fitting in with social expectation. And I think that in a good way, in a healthy way, that's contributing to the really cool sounds that we're getting out of it.
I agree. I love this track, and I look forward to hearing more. I don't see that he is putting out an album anytime soon, but if you want, you can go check out Strawberries. There's a great video of them performing live, and I think they actually just released an official music video for it too, where it takes place in a roller rink. So there's a lot more of that cool 70s style to go check out as well. So
disco balls overlaid and the double exposure on it. It was pretty rocking, and the roller skates are a good throwback to a great throwback sound as well.
Absolutely. Go check it out.
Staying in the relative side of the country, I say relative because it's relative to where I am and it's far away from me, so there you go. Shifting to from Gary, Indiana, Quinn DeVeaux. The track is All I Need. It's soul R&B dance style. Let's be honest. Let's get right into this track, because that intro and that bass had me at hello. Quinn DeVeaux's All I Need is a sound that I did not expect you to propose for the mixtape, Clay. Not in that it's against anything that we usually listen to. And we include various different genres, and we listen to all sorts of different stuff and all different sorts of languages and everything else. But this track is, to me, as soon as I listened to it, it got into my being. It just became a part of me. And it's reminiscent of the Attitude Years of the Temptations. It pushes the happy soul aside and drops into this kind of sneering, I got something to say, and it almost becomes this gospel type R&B soul sound that Quinn describes as blue beat, and it carries with this bass that drives throughout, and it's this hugely addicting track.
It's funny that you just asked me why I included this in the mixtape, and then you just basically went on to describe every reason that I did include it. And part of that is that the entire Book of Soul album just kind of gave me that whole feeling. Like the first time I listened to the album, I didn't stop it. I listened to it beginning to end, and the whole thing just kind of had me going, wow, this is something incredible that I want to share. So to me, that's why I put it in the mixtape, is I wanted everyone else to kind of feel that same thing that I felt.
say that it's special and to say that this is really, really good is downplaying this record and this track. I'm almost to the point where I'm like, okay, we can't have All I Need on here without playing the rest of this, because it is definitely something to experience. But All I Need is a fantastic flagship to a really, really amazing album. And I did the same thing. As soon as I listened to this, I went in and I listened to the whole album and I went, okay, Quinn DeVeaux is on to something here. This is the epitome of the gospel abilities of soul and R&B, but it strikes a chord that is just absolutely, it's almost breathtaking in the way that it all transpires. And it makes you feel welcome at the same time that it entertains the living crap out of you.
Well, and the song to me had this kind of, if you listen to the song, like you talked about at the beginning, like with the percussion and the bass coming in, and there's just all the different layers going on. The whole song feels like an impromptu community backyard stomp. Like it just, everyone's picking up an instrument and they're just going at it. Like you put layers on top of layers on top of layers, and the whole thing just comes together, and you feel the community that's in this song. And I know you talk about how he's kind of got this sneering take on the blues and in soul, and that he's kind of creating this whole thing. And it's, he's got one foot kind of in the old school soul style, and then he's, got another foot in kind of this new uncharted territory. And I think a lot of that comes from the way that he toured. And you said he came from Gary, Indiana, and then he spent a lot of time in San Francisco in the Bay Area, kind of perfecting his live show, which sounds like is incredibly high energy. And listening to the song, you can kind of see why. I mean, I don't know if this plays live the same way or not. I have to imagine it does. And then moved from San Francisco to Nashville, where he ended up actually recording this album, I believe. It was recorded in Nashville, Tennessee at the bomb shelter.
When I listened to All I Need by Quinn DeVeaux, one of the first things that came to mind with this was Miles Davis. And I'm not talking a trumpet or anything special in that regard. I'm talking about a quote from Miles Davis. And I'm gonna censor this for our other listeners if they so desire. But Miles Davis said, "Anybody can play. The note is only 20%. The attitude of the," expletive deleted, "who plays it is 80%. It's almost as if Quinn DeVeaux knows this almost instinctively and executes on it full force with All I Need."
Yeah, I just see all of that attitude and sneer that you talked about, and it all just comes out in the album. And even though it's not in all of these songs, like it's really inherent in this one. And the album Book of Soul just traverses so much different type of style that it's so well-rounded, and I really enjoy it. Again, I can't recommend the album enough. So go check out The Book of Soul by Quinn DeVeaux, which is out now.
Well, gee, why did this one get selected, Clay?
I like it.
Oh, it has nothing to do with where they're from.
I know one of the guys.
Here's how we're going to get into this next track. Clay, I believe that you are not biased.
No,
unbiased. No, I believe that you are not unbiased in the selection of Lemon Pitch Flat Black Sea. Stare at me all you want. I believe that there is some underlying reverence for Portland, Maine that made you lean into Lemon Pitch.
So you are calling me out and saying that I'm biased for including this track?
I'm saying that you are biased in gravitating towards this track, but after listening to it, I understand.
Okay, Mister, I put Boise in every single week.
We don't have a Boise artist this week, Clay.
Okay, you got away with one.
Portland, Maine, Clay. You have an affinity for your general region of home, and when I saw this, as I started looking at the artists, I started going, okay, Portland, Maine. I can understand why Clay may have selected this.
Are you trying to tell me that there aren't decent acts coming out of the far northeast?
Name 3 other decent acts coming out of Portland, Maine, Clay.
No further questions, Your Honor. So we should just end the show now.
Goodbye. So Portland, Maine's Lemon Pitch. This is actually their debut full-length record, is it not?
It is.
Of the same name, Flat Black Sea. This was, as we had talked about with Quinn DeVeaux, this kind of changes direction on us. We're really good at that. And if you don't know that by now, then you're not listening to enough of our episodes. But we do change direction, and this changes direction. This has a sweeping melody that exists throughout it in the air of an alt rock. But they go by the title indie rock, which, as you know, I don't like just throwing out indie rock out there. I would say that it's kind of an air of alt rock, and it, I guess, keeping in the sense of the other tracks that we've listened to, has kind of this throwback nod to it in a way that feels kind of vintage, but yet new at the same time. So what drew you to this track, Clay? What works for you on Flat Black Sea?
Initially, I gave the record a listen because, when somebody pitches something to you, no pun intended, I'll listen to anything at least once. And I have to say, listening to Flat Black Sea and also the title track off that record, that it's kind of just all over the place. Like you mentioned kind of that, early alt rock, maybe garage rock, kind of garage band, indie rock kind of sound. Like everything about it is very divergent and eclectic, and it kind of goes all over the place on you at times. And I mean that instrumentally, although I have to say, this is a song that you have to listen to with headphones. And I know we say that a lot, but if you listen to it on poor speakers, it's just, you're doing yourself a disservice because it's just going to sound very flat to you. And once you put it on and listen to it, listen to everything that's going on in it, like the guitar riffs are doing all kinds of noodles and bends that you can't pick up on that first listen. And that, the notes take all kinds of different directions, like kind of in the same way that jazz goes, like where you expect the notes to go one way and they're just like, no, we're going to play a different note on you here. Like if you're going dan da da dan da da boo, like you don't expect that drop to happen, but it just kind of... That's
called the Vanilla Ice effect, the do. You brought it up, and I want to interject here for a minute because I want to carry this thought that you had, or I want to dive into it. I'm not going to carry anything.
Please,
I'm lazy.
It's this is a community show here.
The community radio, not really, but maybe one day. Anyway, you had talked about how this track doesn't necessarily speak to the rest of the album. So for me, I got kind of a Heaven's Jail, early Little Gold type vibe out of this, where it's the album as a whole almost has the sneering punk rock sound to it. It feels very much like a punk bass, but Flat Black Sea doesn't really come through with that. You don't get that punk sound with Flat Black Sea that you do with the rest of the record. And if you listen to the record, you'll definitely know what we're talking about. But to me, that's a really good thing, because as you pointed out, there's all these intricacies and these things that are happening. And I think by not just piling on this continuous sound and this core of punk that just drives every track, I think that they are showcasing those layers that you had pointed out and that guitar work and really flexing their abilities on a first record, which I thought was quite impressive.
Brilliant lungs for running, but no willingness to race. Facility for misdirection, overstate your case. A special kind of uselessness, these critics that you make. A sagging fortress standing on from the cell phone towers. Desert of lost keys. Dry heat negating all your planning for the daytime hours. It's turning out to be a problem.
In all of that, like, it's not all punk, and you can kind of tell they're having fun with it. Like, there's a little bit of a nod and a wink that's going on without going like, you know, like a full monocle rock, like Panic at the Disco. Like, you know, they're not going all super crazy with it. They're still keeping it simple with that kind of indie alt rock thing that you talked about. Like, they wear hoodies and not Sergeant at Arms jackets. But it's a very unique and eclectic, like, it's quirky, and they're having fun with the whole thing. Like, I mean, you listen to the lyrics and it's kind of like the way that I listen to Long Winters sometimes. That band comes up a lot, where it's basically like somebody's taking refrigerator poetry and just like throwing it at the thing to see like, oh, there's a sentence.
And the writing of Flat Black Sea and the record as a whole, that drew me in a whole nother level. And specifically with this track, the second verse, it sings out, quote, "Brilliant lungs for running, but no willingness to race. Faculty for misdirection overstate your case. A special kind of uselessness, these critics that you make. A sagging fortress standing on thawed-out frozen lake," end quote. That captivated me on a whole nother level. When you know the lyrics and when you listen to it, and the lyrics are on their Bandcamp page, so when you're listening to this, you can certainly dive into them. I really appreciate the songwriting in this.
And I thought you would, based on how the conversation that we had about The Opposite and Wilson. You know, it's just like those types of lyrics where you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I kind of see what you're doing there. And
this for a first album, to have this kind of songwriting and to have this kind of flexibility musically as well with what they're doing with their sound and what they're driving at their bass, as in the band, not the instrument, is setting up something that could potentially be very, very, very good. And something that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on, because I want to hear more and I want to see how this all transpires. And for now, we have Lemon Pitch's Flat Black Sea and the record, which has already dropped, Clay.
Yeah, it's out now on Repeating Cloud Records.
It's turning out to be a problem. It's turning out to be a problem. It's turning out to be a problem. It's turning out to be a problem.
Talking of bias and maybe some overappreciation is probably the best way to get into this next track and next artist, simply because The Still Tide holds a very special place in, I believe, both of our hearts, as a longtime friend of Nanobot and a longtime supporter of the Nanobot Rock Bitter Creek Alehouse Tree Fort brunch sets that we do. We felt that it's worth noting that we absolutely appreciate The Still Tide, and we have started to see some amazing things come out of this. And we are going to be discussing the track Keep It by The Still Tide.
And it's just an incredible band that's coupled with just really good human beings. So yeah, there may be a little bit of a bias there, but again, you want to share the good in the world. And to me, this is as good as it gets with Keep It. You know, I mean, the band has always been kind of this almost borderline like brooding bedroom pop in kind of a, you know, wearing indie shoes type of thing. But this song to me kind of showcases a little bit more of a soul sensibility, as well as they just kind of drop in some 80s pop into it. Like, there's just riffs in this, and I don't know why, and maybe I'm thinking of the wrong band, but for some reason, like Aha is coming to me with a lot of some of the sounds that I'm hearing in the background of this track.
I guess we've had enough. Tried to make it last, but our heads in the clouds. Cannot reshape the past. Oh, if it's over now, can
That's a really interesting reference to gravitate to Aha. And I think that speaks volumes of the Still Tide. The Still Tide is kind of everywhere, but the Still Tide lives in Denver. But it's primarily based around Anna Morissette and her roots in the Pacific Northwest. And there have been a lot of really talented contributors to the Still Tide since we first met them in 2016. It's labeled as luminous indie rock. Keep It is off the album Between Skies, and since 2015's Half Empty Rooms release, 2017 Run Out, which was a huge turning point sonically if you listen to the band and if you're familiar with them, Run Out started to turn the corner for the Still Tide. I've always been a fan of them, but it didn't feel like they really, I hate to say get their feet under them because this is not a grounded sound, but the Still Tide really started maybe to spread their wings with Run Out. And then as we hear with Between Skies, we really, really start to hear, okay, this is the Still Tide. This is something to take note of. The sound from Still Tide to me has always been, and it's proven with Keep It, is sonically beautiful. It's vocally captivating. Honestly, if I were to make a, quote, 10 artists you need to know right now list, if someone said, here's what you have to do, I will not refrain from saying the Still Tide would be at the top of that list for me.
I like your term sonically beautiful, and I feel like that encompasses a lot of their music. And I really feel like this album was kind of where they really started to kind of get more of their rock chops going. And that really comes into play in this song for me. And it's even as simple as, you know, she'll throw in like a little you know, into the music where it's just got a little more extra oomph to it, if you will.
Keep it organized. Watched you disappear, just waving their flag. Your intuition tugged in your bloody breast. But anger is easy and blame it hard to find. I know it's walking you home from the bar every night. But keep your heart. Keep your heart. Keep it opened up. Keep it.
There's a whole, I don't want to say image, but there's a whole presence that occurs with the Still Tide. And whether you're at the brunch set, if you recall, she came in and set up the lights around the microphone stand.
The Christmas lights.
The Christmas lights, and it creates this ambiance. And I think that ambiance is key, not only for the Still Tide executing their sound, but for drawing people in as well. They make it seem so easy in execution, live or on record. And I will fully attest to that. They make it seem so ridiculously easy. But there's this drifting ethereal tone that exists within the Still Tide. And maybe that is the, quote, Still Tide, is that ethereal drift. But it like this track, it gently lifts you up and carries you kind of among the clouds and stars and in this warm presence that for me relaxes and inspires. And it entertains in such a warm, intimate way that I just can't get enough of. And so when we thought of putting Still Tide on the mixtape, there was absolutely no hesitancy from me.
But the bridge in this song, like, completely does the opposite of that to me. Like, you can just feel so much swirling in the undercurrent, and that there's just a lot of tension and all of that going on in it. And they give you just enough to really hook you in without having to go overboard. I really loved it.
So check out the Still Tide and check out Keep It off Between Skies.
Keep it. Keep your heart. Keep it.
next track's about old men, so I'll let you go first.
Oh. Oh, that's hurtful, Greg. Why would you do that to me?
That's what I imagine you do after a long day is curl up on the recliner, Clay.
We don't own a recliner.
Yeah, we don't either.
We have a sectional.
Ooh.
How are we going to take it home, Greg?
Starflyer 59 is back. And yes, technically Starflyer 59 never really went anywhere per se. There have been a lot of contributions, mainly to the 2017 project Low Tom, which is a whole nother record I could go on and on and on and on about. Was actually the best album of Nanobot rock from 2017. But Jason Martin of Starflyer 59 and Trey Many, who plays drums for Starflyer 59, were both part of Low Tom. And Starflyer 59 just basically dropped on the world this track called This Recliner. It is off the forthcoming EP Miami, which will be released June 19th via Velvet Blue Music. And this is it's a fascinating turn of events for rock in my eyes.
What makes it so fascinating to you?
It's fascinating to me because it's almost like this song is about all of us getting old, but it's executed in a way that doesn't make me feel old. It makes me feel like, yeah, this is rock, let's do this. But it's basically singing about sitting in a recliner and your back hurting. And it almost feels like it's this old man anthem. But at the same time, it's not. There's so much more to it. It drives in this post-punk rock downplayed into an echoing, trance-inducing song that I would say nods to the darkness, almost with a wink in its eye, but kind of like, I know you're there. We're going to get a little dark, but we're not going to get there musically. And it pulls it off very, very, very well. And it's something that I can't get enough.
Well, and I feel like it kind of skirts two different decades because it goes through kind of that 80s new wave sound, coupled with a little bit of the shoegaze. That's, our favorite subject to talk about. But then it also kind of goes into the mid 2000s that, the late, your favorite term, indie rock. Like I'm trying to think of, My Morning Jetpack. We were promised jackets.
We were promised jetpacks.
Yes, we were promised jetpacks.
We were promised jackets? We were promised jackets and I'm cold. Give me a jacket.
So much for global warming. But it's just, it has that driving sensibility and just hooks you in with, it's relentlessness in a way. Like the music just doesn't stop coming at you. But his voice, I mean, come on, his voice, like that whole, like that deep sonorous tone that's, you've got the relentless guitar riffs coming at you, but then his voice is just gliding over the top of it. And as much as it's filling you with this kinetic energy, it's also soothing you at the same time.
There's a stormy cloud over my head and what's more in my insides wrapped down to the core. So what if I get out just to get back in? It's what I'm living through and living in when I'm laid out on my back. Everything
That is a hell of a way to put it, and I wholeheartedly agree. I'm trying really hard here not to make reference to T.W. Walsh and Pedro the Lion, the other aspects of Low Tom, because there's so much of that exists within Low Tom that also we hear in Starflyer 59. But more importantly, if you go back and if you listen to the self-titled from 1994, Starflyer 59 has been releasing music for the last 26 years now. If you go back and you listen to that 1994 record, and then you flash forward to this Recliner and what I anticipate to be Miami, or what Miami will be when it comes out June 19th, it has always stayed true to its sound in a way that is very, very identifiably Starflyer 59. And at its core, it's always held on to that. It's almost this post-punk shoegazy rock sound, but it's almost evolved in a way that it's keeping fresh without just sounding like we're rehashing the same thing for 26 years. I think that's really admirable. And that's another thing that makes this Recliner a great track, is it feels like it has teeth that it sinks into you that you're familiar with, but you haven't quite experienced yet.
And it's so rich. Like, I mean, there's so much depth to the song and so much to enjoy that I'm glad that we're sharing it on the mixtape. Like, you try to talk about it, but you've at least got the music to play to accompany it. And it's like trying to describe it. I mean, it's like, describe the color blue or describe a mountain. Well, it's big, but like here you actually, like, you can say, you can paint it in a way that like shows the depth and the size and majesty of the mountain in the right way. And I'm looking forward to hearing more Starflyer 59 and Miami out on June 19th. So go check out this Recliner right now. Wait for Miami to come out. Go check out 26 years worth of music and enjoy this track.
Thanks for spending some time with us and listening to the Nanobot Rock mixtape. We appreciate it, and we hope that you have found some sounds that inspire you or intrigue you or make you feel. Because frankly, if you're feeling, then it's working, regardless of what the feel is. We appreciate you spending your time with us. Keep supporting local and independent music. Keep sharing local and independent music. And as your record stores begin to reopen, show them some love. If you found something on any of our mixtapes, go in and see if you can find it in your record store. If they don't have it, ask them. I'm sure they could order it. I like to just stop mid-thought because that, flows really well.
It does. It transcends beautifully into me saying you can find all of our show notes at nanobotrock.com. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook at nanobotrock, and you can always email us at info@nanobotrock.com. You can let us know your thoughts of the episode, or you can share your music with us, and we always appreciate any of your feedback and suggestions. We're always looking for new and wonderful music to be sharing with people. So please keep listening, keep supporting local and independent music, and until next time, thank you all.
Damn you, Kirk Cameron!